I apologize for the weird portmanteau. I didn't realize this slide was going to be up for like half an hour whilst you were all walking in. It was supposed to be inclusivity and diversity together. It ended up looking like it was like the inclusive university. I'm sorry, there's another slide afterwards that I didn't want you to see, so I just put that slide up. Thank you guys for coming this morning. It's been amazing. Thank you to all of the guys who put this event together. And yeah, I'm kind of saying guys too much there. It's weird, isn't it, how there are people in this room, every time I said guys, they flinched a little bit. And there are people in this room that were thinking, I think he's saying guys too frequently. And there are people in this room who didn't even know I was saying guys. And most of the time, when particularly a white middle-class man stands up and starts talking about diversity, there's a lot of hypocrisy going on there, and there's a lot of accidental exclusive language. And we see it quite frequently here is that a person will come and say, we're really interested in hiring more female engineers, for example, but they'll talk about the guys back at the office. And it's not because they want to exclude people. It's because they don't know that they are excluding people. And that's what I want to talk about today, is the mistakes, the accidents, the accidental exclusive behavior. So, this is the slide I didn't want you to see immediately. As I said, look, I am not a good person to be talking about diversity, considering that I'm not from any underrepresented group. However, working at Makers Academy has made me ask a lot of questions of myself. I am not usually a nervous presenter, but I am incredibly nervous right now because of who I am and the stuff I'm going to be talking about. I don't feel that I'm allowed to talk about this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you the questions that have been asked of me in my education at becoming a more inclusive person. I have a lot of questions, and I haven't timed this presentation, so hopefully we're not going to go over. So, this word, guys, diverse. Is it a diverse word? I hate this, the way that we use this word diverse, with these diverse candidates. Candidates aren't diverse. A person isn't diverse. What you're doing there is you're saying about a candidate that the only value that they have is that they're from an underrepresented group. That's awful. No, a group of people might be a diverse group of people. A heterogeneous rather than a homogeneous group of people. I prefer the word inclusive. I think that's ultimately diversity is the thing we're aiming for, and being inclusive is the way that we get there. But actually, I think exclusivity or exclusion is the more important concept. And my point today is, don't try and maximize diversity. Try and minimize exclusion. Don't try and hire a person from X group. Try and minimize the number of people from X group that you exclude from your process. So here are my assumptions today. No one is excluding people on purpose. Everyone in this room, most people you know, I think would probably describe themselves as a nice person. No one is intentionally being the sort of person that says, oh no, well, we're only going to hire these people because these people are better than those people. It's done by accident, most of the time. Obviously, there are some exceptions to this. And I think that everyone here today is interested in finding out what they can do to stop those accidents happening. Have you asked yourself the following questions? What needs to change? Mistake often made by many people who work in recruitment, many people who work in, we work a lot with engineers, software engineers, this applies across the board. We focus on one, maybe two of these elements, and we're like, oh yeah, well, we're going to fix that bit so that we get more diversity. No, you need to fix all of it, the whole thing. Otherwise, there's no point. You know, if you go and change the wording on your job descriptions to try and increase the number of people from a particular group to apply to your jobs, that's great until they meet your recruiters and your recruiters are using very exclusive language. It doesn't work. You have to do the whole thing, or at least a significant part of it. So when we're doing the employer brand, When we're looking at the employer brand, when you're constructing your employer brand, when you're talking about it, when you're presenting it out to the world, are there aspects of your brand that are excluding particular types of people? And how do you know that? Have you spoken to any of them, for example? Have you gone and asked that person, this is us, how does that feel for you? Does that make you feel good? Does that make you feel welcome? Because if it doesn't make you feel welcome, you probably need to change it. When we're looking at your recruitment campaigns, are you evaluating which channels are getting you the kinds of people, like are getting you all the same kinds of people, and which channel are getting you all kinds of different people? And are you trying out new channels all the time? Are you going to speak to lots of different places? I'm sure if you're here, bless you, that you've probably done something towards the idea of, oh, we're going to sponsor women in tech events, for example. Great, that's a channel. But there are many, many more channels out there. And there's this one, the golden rule for me is always, go where they are. Don't expect them to come to you. Go where they are. Wherever it is that they feel safe and comfortable, ask permission to be there and to listen. Because listening is more important than talking when it comes to this. So the messaging. In your employer brand, is there authenticity? Are you starting with a message that is the same message that passes all the way through this process? Are you starting with the same thing that the colleagues in the canteen are going to be talking about? Are they using the same language? This is going to be a theme, by the way. Are you using a common language? When you're talking about your job descriptions, are you describing a job or are you describing a person? Because if you start talking about essential characteristics, you're moving into describing a person. And when you start describing a person, you've already decided who's good at this job. You've already decided, which means that you're excluding all of the people that don't fit the criteria, who otherwise might be very good at the job. Try and describe the job. And if you can, don't even describe the activities of the job, because now you're telling that person how to do their job, which isn't a great way to interact with someone that you've never met before. Try instead only to talk about the desired outcomes of that role. What is it that, by hiring a person into this job, what needs to happen in the business? And you let the person reading that decide whether they're the right person to make those things happen. That sounds quite inclusive, rather than the exclusive of you must tick these boxes, otherwise you're probably not going to apply. I'm sure you've all heard the stat, I don't know where it comes from, but apparently women need to satisfy at least 80% of the criteria of a job before they'll apply, whereas men are more like 40%. I don't know whether it's true, I read it somewhere, but it's an interesting thing to think about if it is true. If you're saying, here's a checklist of things that you need to be, you're automatically making it less likely that certain groups of people are going to apply for that job. Are you saying what you want in your job descriptions, or are you talking about what they want in your job descriptions? We want this kind of a person. Or are you saying you want to achieve these things, and by coming and working here you can achieve these things? That's more about intrinsic motivation. That's just a good piece of advice about job descriptions. I don't think that's really very much to do with exclusion or inclusivity. Also, are you satisfying criteria, or are you... It's that weird thing, isn't it, that like an employment contract is a little bit like a marriage certificate. You're going to spend a lot of time with this person. You're legally bound together. Like, are you taking it that seriously? I hope so. Recruiters and interviewers are bundled together because ultimately this comes back to, is everyone using the same language? A common language. Is everyone saying guys all the time? Because, I mean, if everyone's saying guys, then at least you're consistent, I suppose. But like, no, you can't have a fantastic process that's attracting all of these amazing people in, and then suddenly they meet an interviewer who just completely destroys their experience. So it's not that you need to go out and control that, it's that you need to know along the way what's happening. Are you talking to all of those people who are going to be interacting with your candidates and ensuring that they're on board? Hiring managers, this is one of my favorite stories ever about how to get this wrong. Google put enormous amounts of money, led by their internal recruitment team, their HR teams, and they said, we're going to get all of these inclusive people. inclusive people, diverse people. None of these words grammatically make sense, but that's what we're going to call it. No, we're going to go out and find more people from underrepresented groups. And they did the most incredible job, and they had this incredibly diverse candidate pool. The process had no bias, it was fantastic, and then the hiring managers hired all the dudes. Like, there's just no point in doing it. There's no point unless every single person along the way is bought in. And the way that you can tell that someone is bought in is that they're constantly asking themselves questions. They're constantly trying to improve. Because the minute you start asking yourselves these questions, and I know this from personal experience, because I didn't used to be very good at this, and I don't claim to be any good at it now, but I'm slightly better. The minute you start asking yourself these questions, that's when you're starting to think about it in the right way. And please don't beat yourself up if you don't have answers to the questions, if you don't know. But asking the questions is what's important. The team that they're going to work with, so we're now really laboring the point of the consistency, the authenticity. They land in this team, they've had a fantastic experience. The hiring manager has totally recognized that this person is fantastic and amazing. And they land in a team, and that team is, let's take a really extreme example. There's like 10 guys that are all the same age, all the same race, all went to the same school, and a woman from a different country with different color skin arrives. What is her experience going to be like? Because if you can confidently say that her experience is going to be fantastic, and all of those people who are completely the same as each other but completely different from her, if she's going to have a fantastic time there, then great, you're doing a great job. It doesn't mean just because a group is homogenous that it's necessarily going to be exclusive. You could have an incredibly diverse group that is particularly exclusive to the new person that joins. The point is about their experience, and if their experience isn't being at least observed, preferably somehow controlled or is protected, then again, it's not going to work. You might have really great short-term results. I mean, like, yeah, look, we got all these people that we were looking for, or, well, no, because that contradicts the thing I said at the beginning. But yeah, we've increased the diversity of our applicant pool. We've got all these people. We've hired a load of people. All of our stats have gone up. Great, but then 6 months later, they all leave because they're not having a great time. Same with the management structure. Have a think about, just think about the way that you run the business, the way that you engage with people, the way that you talk to people, the way that you structure decisions. How do decisions get made? Do any of those things matter? I didn't think they did until somebody told me that they did. Someone said, actually, the fact that you talk about decision making in this particular way indicates to me that you're probably the sort of place that I would feel comfortable working, that I would feel welcome, that I would feel accepted. The way you make decisions, it doesn't seem like that has anything to do with it, but it does. This is obvious, right? Unless the senior leaders are bought into the idea, it's never going to work. To be honest, if the senior leaders aren't bought in, where did you get your mandate to do all of this from anyway? Great, you're doing it by yourself, probably. It's either your responsibility to go and persuade the senior leaders or otherwise. The question there is, how do you know that they're bought in? Or are they just paying lip service? And I would say, I think it is are they asking themselves these questions? Are they trying to improve all the time? Are they seeking to learn more all the time? That, I think, is a really good indicator. The last one, the accidental conversation in the corridor, where you go, da-da-da-da-da, chat. Oh, that person, not sure how I feel about that. How do you then, as that person who is now feeling excluded, manage that situation? Where do you go? Who do you speak to? Are those processes there in place? Every single piece of the puzzle needs to be finely tuned, and some of the pieces early on can be dramatically changed.